The retirement industry does not want you to see this video because these 12 Carolina towns prove you can live, really live, on a Social Security check alone, and they make its million-dollar advice look like a scare tactic. See, there's a version of retirement in the Carolinas that nobody prints in the brochure. Not the glossy one on the billboards with the golf cart and the gate and the monthly dues. The real one. Right now, the average Social Security check runs about $2,080 a month. Call it $25,000 a year, and every financial advisor in America will swear up and down that isn't nearly enough to retire on. In the towns I'm about to show you, it is more than enough. A starter home in Asheville will run you north of $500,000 today. Drive 1 hour east, and whole neighborhoods sit under $260,000. Same mountains, same state, half the price. I spent months on the back roads most people blow right past on their way to somewhere pricier. And what I found was a mill town where Main Street never quit. A mountain hamlet the interstate forgot. A coastal village where a 3-bedroom still starts with a 1, and a town so perfectly small the whole country assumes it's fictional. If any of that sounds better than bagging groceries at $75 just to cover your own property tax bill, you are in exactly the right place. So hit that subscribe button now because we're counting all 12 of these down and you do not want to miss number 1. Let's count it down. Number 12. Lenoir, North Carolina. When I first drove into Lenoir, I thought I'd found a town the modern world simply forgot. Quiet storefronts, foothills climbing toward the Blue Ridge, not a single chain restaurant in sight. Then I learned what those storefronts used to be. Here's the wild card fact. Lenoir was once one of the furniture-making capitals of the entire country, turning out sofas and dressers and dining sets for half of America, right up until that industry sailed overseas and took the paychecks with it. The town didn't die, it just got cheap. The median home here sits right around $260,000, and plenty of solid brick ranches go for well under that number. On a Social Security check, that's a house you can actually pay off in a few years, mountain air that costs you nothing, and a Main Street that never truly closed, it just quietly stopped charging city prices. And this is not some empty ghost town either. There's a real hospital in town, a community college, a farmer's market that runs from spring clear through fall, and a lighted star that glows on the mountain above the rooftops every single night, like something out of a movie you half remember. You get all of it for the price of a used SUV in a big city. Now that is the whole pitch for Lenoir, and it's the pitch for this entire list. You are not moving to nowhere. You are moving to the somewhere that simply forgot to raise its rates. Number 11. Abbeville, South Carolina. When I first drove into Abbeville, I honestly thought somebody had built a movie set and forgotten to tear it down. A perfect brick square, an old opera house, a stone courthouse, all of it wrapped tight around a green in the middle of town. Then I found out none of it is fake. It's been standing right there since 1908. Here's the wildcard fact. That opera house on the square once pulled in traveling vaudeville acts and touring singers who rode the rail line through town, and after more than a century, it still lights up and puts on live shows today. Abbeville bills itself as a place where real history actually happened, and yet the price tags never caught up to the charm. You can buy a character-packed older home a short walk from that square for a fraction of what the same house would cost anywhere near a city. For a retiree, that means walkable coffee in the morning, live theater at night, and a front porch neighborhood in between. All of it on a fixed income that would barely cover a parking spot in a bigger town. And here's the part that seals it. Because this is South Carolina, the state doesn't tax your Social Security at all, and the cost of everything else stays low right along with it. Groceries, gas, a plumber, a haircut. All of it runs less than it does in the places everyone keeps telling you to retire. That's the quiet advantage of a town like this one. Nobody is out here bidding up the price of a slow, pretty life. Small town, big square, tiny price tag. Number 10. Seneca, South Carolina. When I first drove into Seneca, I assumed it was just another quiet stop on the way to somewhere better. Then I saw the water. Here's the wild card fact. Seneca sits tucked right between two enormous mountain lakes. Clear, blue, cold Blue Ridge water, with some of the mildest winters you will find anywhere in the Carolina uplands. Snow is basically a rumor here. And because nearby Clemson soaks up all the attention and all the high prices, Seneca gets to stay affordable in its shadow. You get lake access, foothill scenery, a real working downtown, and a hospital just minutes away, which matters a whole lot more than anyone wants to admit at retirement age. Homes here won't drain a modest nest egg, and the taxes stay gentle. Now, here's something most people never even factor in. South Carolina does not tax your Social Security, not $1 of it. And on top of that, the state hands retirees 65 and older a real deduction against the rest of their income, so even a small pension or a modest IRA gets shielded. That is money that stays in your pocket every single year just for choosing to live on this side of the state line. Do the math on a lake house you can afford, in a place where the winters are soft and the state leaves your check alone, and you start asking some very uncomfortable questions about wherever you're living right now. On roughly $2,000 a month, you are living on a lake instead of just dreaming about one. That is the kind of math this whole list is built on. Number 9. Kinston, North Carolina. When I first drove into Kinston, I'll be honest with you, I thought I'd taken a wrong turn into a town that had quietly given up. Then I ate there. Here's the wild card fact. This little eastern Carolina town, sitting way out in the old tobacco country, became a genuine national food destination, pulling people in from hours away to eat farm-to-table cooking absolutely nobody expected to find out here. A real culinary spotlight in a town where the houses cost next to nothing. And that gap right there is the whole twist that makes Kinston work. Because it sat off every retirement radar for decades, home prices stayed flat while the restaurants and the reputation grew up around them. You can buy a whole house here for what a down payment costs in Raleigh. Some comfortable 3 bedrooms trade for well under $150,000, the kind of number that sounds made up until you scroll the listings yourself. There's a river running right through town, a well-known brewery, a walkable little downtown that is slowly, genuinely waking back up. For a retiree who loves a good meal but flat out refuses to carry a big mortgage into their 70s, Kinston is a sneaky good answer hiding in plain sight. Your money buys more here than almost anywhere else in the state. Cheap rent, surprising plate, and nobody looking over your shoulder while you enjoy it. Number 8. Morganton, North Carolina. When I first drove into Morganton, I was sure I was looking at an expensive mountain town. Craft brewery, real bookstore, a lively little downtown sitting right at the foot of the Blue Ridge. Then I actually checked the price tags. Here's the wild card fact. Morganton is the gateway to Table Rock and some of the best hiking in the entire state, and yet the median home still hovers right around $310,000, while Burke County's property taxes stay refreshingly low compared to the tourist towns just up the road. This is that mountain hamlet the interstate mostly forgot, close enough to Asheville to drive over for lunch, far enough away to completely escape Asheville's prices. On a Social Security income, that translates into a real house, real hiking trails out your own back door, and a tax bill that doesn't quietly eat your grocery money every month. And the town gives you the things that actually matter later in life. A hospital, a walkable main street, neighbors close enough to notice if your porch light doesn't come on. See, This is the part the glossy retirement magazines always skip. You do not have to be rich to wake up under a mountain in this country. You just have to be willing to look one town over from where everybody else is fighting over the same overpriced view. Morganton is living proof of exactly that. Same Blue Ridge, fraction of the cost. Number 7. Camden, South Carolina. When I first drove into Camden, I figured it was just another sleepy little Midlands town. Then I learned it's older than the country itself. Here's the wild card fact. Camden is the oldest inland city in all of South Carolina, with roots reaching back to the 1730s, and it is serious horse country, home to a famous steeplechase that draws thousands of people in their very finest hats out to the track every single spring. It's got real history buried in the dirt and genuine elegance sitting on the surface, and somehow the cost of living never got the memo about either one. You can settle into a gracious old tree-lined neighborhood here for a modest price, live just minutes from the state capital's hospitals and shopping, and still keep your monthly costs low enough to actually breathe. And remember, this is South Carolina, so your Social Security check lands here completely untaxed by the state, and the property taxes on a home you actually live in are among the gentlest anywhere in the region. For a retiree who wants a little charm and a little dignity without the coastal sticker shock, Camden quietly over-delivers. Good doctors nearby, streets built for evening walks, a pace slow enough to remember what your own weekends feel like. Old town, fast horses, slow prices, and honestly, that combination is a lot rarer than it should be. If you're learning stuff about the Carolinas you never expected, do me a favor and hit that like button. It genuinely helps this video reach more people just like you. Number 6. Cheraw, South Carolina. When I first drove into Cheraw, I thought I'd stumbled onto a well-kept secret. Turns out, I had. Here's the wildcard fact. This tiny town on the Petey River is the birthplace of one of the most important jazz musicians who ever lived, a bebop legend whose horn still fills concert halls all the way around the world, and Cheraw itself has long been called one of the prettiest towns in the whole South. Wide, historic streets, old churches with real bells, a little green square right in the heart of it, and prices so low they almost read like a typo. You can buy a piece of that living history for less than a new car costs in some cities. Now think about what that actually means on a fixed income. A walkable, beautiful, deeply southern town where a modest check covers a real house with room to spare, and the music the whole world came looking for was born right down the street. There's a state park with a lake just outside of town, festivals through the warmer months, and the same untaxed Social Security deal every South Carolina town on this list quietly hands you. Cheraw punches so far above its weight, it's almost unfair to the towns around it. It gives you history, beauty, and breathing room, all for a price that would be a rounding error in Charleston. And the wild part is, almost nobody has found it yet, which, when your dollar has to last 30 more years, is exactly the kind of town you want to reach before everyone else does. Number 5. Georgetown, South Carolina. When I first drove into Georgetown, I braced myself for coastal prices because this is the real thing, a genuine waterfront town, sitting right on the water with a working harbor and a harbor walk lined with seafood joints. Then I saw that ordinary people can still actually afford to live here. Here's the wild card fact. Georgetown is one of the oldest cities in the entire state, built generations ago on the old rice trade, and it hands you honest coastal living. Salt air, fresh shrimp, boats knocking against the docks, without the brutal price tag stapled to the famous beach towns just an hour south. That right there is the crack in the whole system. Everybody chases the big-name coast and pays triple for the privilege, while Georgetown sits quietly up the bay, historic and salty and completely reasonable. On a modest retirement income, You can wake up near the water instead of an hour inland dreaming about it. Picture the actual morning. Coffee out on the porch, a short walk down to the harbor, fresh shrimp off the boat for dinner, and a Social Security check the state of South Carolina refuses to tax a single penny of. That is not a vacation you save up for all year. That is just an ordinary Tuesday down here. There's a hospital in town, a walkable historic district, and enough front porch quiet to lower anybody's blood pressure. Coastal life on a small town budget barely exists in America anymore. And yet here it is, waiting, at a price a regular retirement check can actually carry. Number 4. Washington, North Carolina. When I first drove into Washington, I assumed the name had to be some kind of coincidence. It is not. Here's the wild card fact. This little town, sitting right on the Pamlico River, was the very first place in all of America ever named after George Washington. The folks here call it Little Washington, and it beat the nation's own capital to the punch by a good few years. And here's what nobody bothers to tell you about it. It is genuinely waterfront, and it is genuinely cheap. This is that coastal village I teased at the very start, the one where a 3-bedroom really can still start with a 1. You get a riverfront boardwalk to stroll at sunset, a historic downtown that's easy to walk, sailboats bobbing at the docks, and home prices that would make a retiree down in Florida actually weep with envy. On a Social Security check, you are not renting some cramped room a mile from the water. You are owning a whole home right on it. And the everyday stuff holds up too. A hospital in town, flat and easy streets to walk, restaurants along the river. See, this is the version nobody puts in the retirement brochure because it quietly embarrasses every overpriced coastal town in the country. Washington is the answer to a question the real estate machine really wishes you'd stop asking. Why am I paying triple for the same water? First in name, and very nearly last in price. Number 3. New Bern, North Carolina. This is the one the locals genuinely begged me not to put on this list. When I first drove into New Bern, I thought it had to be too good to be true. A gorgeous, historic riverfront downtown right where two rivers meet, colonial architecture on every block, sailboats scattered across the water. Then I found out it's already a magnet for retirees, and the ones who got in early do not want the secret leaking out any further. Here's the wild card fact. New Bern is the birthplace of Pepsi Cola, mixed up for the very first time right here in a downtown drugstore back in 1898. That is a genuine piece of American history, poured out of a soda fountain. And despite being one of the single most beautiful waterfront towns in the whole state, New Bern stays shockingly reasonable. You can still find a comfortable home just minutes from the water for a price that would be flat out laughable in any famous harbor town up north. It's got excellent hospitals, which at this stage of life is not a small thing. Flat, walkable streets. A historic downtown practically built for slow, unhurried evenings. For a retiree living on a fixed income who still wants beauty and water and real history wrapped around them, New Bern might honestly be the single best value on the entire East Coast. You get the waterfront, the charm, the deep history, and the low cost of living all in one place, all at the same time. And that combination almost never survives out in the open. No wonder the people who found it first wanted it kept so quiet. Number 2, Walterboro, South Carolina. And number 2 is a place you would never, ever expect. When I first drove into Walterboro, I honestly thought it was just a highway pit stop between Charleston and the interstate. I could not possibly have been more wrong. Here's the wild card fact. Walterboro proudly calls itself the front porch capital of the Low Country, and it flat out earns the title with block after block after block of grand old homes wrapped in deep shaded porches, all of it sitting beneath enormous live oaks dripping with Spanish moss. And just outside of town, the legendary Tuskegee Airmen actually trained during the Second World War. Real history, real beauty, and almost unbelievable prices. You can buy a stately old southern home here, the exact kind with a wraparound porch built for rocking chairs and sweet tea, for a fraction of what the very same house would fetch an hour up the road in Charleston. That's the whole game right there. Walterboro hands you authentic low-country living, the moss, the oaks, the long, slow golden evenings, at a price a Social Security check can genuinely carry all by itself. It's Charleston's charm without 1 ounce of Charleston's cruelty to your bank account. There's a hospital in town, a walkable historic district, and antique shops lining a downtown that feels frozen in the best possible way. This is the town where you finally stop asking whether you can afford the life you wanted and just start living it. Same low country, same live oaks, a tiny sliver of the price. If you've made it this far, you're clearly someone who does their homework before they buy. So, do yourself a favor and hit that like button, then let's get to number 1. Number 1, Mount Airy, North Carolina. And honestly, this is the one I'd move to myself. When I first drove into Mount Airy, I felt like I'd somehow seen it all before, and I had, and so have you, even if you have never once set foot in the state of North Carolina. Here's the wildcard fact. Mount Airy is the real-life hometown of Andy Griffith, and it's the town that inspired Mayberry, the fictional little community that millions of Americans grew up watching on television night after night. Except this one is real. You can walk down the actual main street, sit at the actual diner counter and order the same pork chop sandwich people have lined up for since the 1920s. Get your hair cut in an honest-to-goodness old-fashioned barber shop. It is the small town that everyone in the whole country quietly assumed had to be made up for the cameras, and it's just standing there in the foothills, still living at its own gentle, unhurried pace. That right there resolves the very first promise I made you at the top of this video. The town so perfectly small the whole country thinks it's fictional. And here is the part that truly seals it as number 1. For all of that fame, Mount Airy stays genuinely, honestly affordable. Homes here won't break a modest retirement budget. The property taxes are kind, and the entire town is built around the exact things this whole list has been quietly chasing from the very beginning. A slow main street, a real front porch, and neighbors who still lift a hand and wave when you drive past. That is why it lands at number 1. Not because it's the very cheapest, though it comes awfully close. Not because it's the most beautiful, though it truly is lovely. But because Mount Airy is the one place on this entire list where the fantasy and the price tag finally meet each other right in the middle. You can live the small-town American dream, the one everybody swears died off 50 years ago on a Social Security check, in a paid-off house, on a street where people still know your name and still expect to see you at the diner on Saturday. And that is not some rerun playing on an old television set. That is just an ordinary Tuesday in Mount Airy, which is exactly why, out of all 12 of these towns, it's the one I'd pack up and move to myself. Every single town on this list has the one thing the big Carolina metros lost a long, long time ago. Character, affordability, and a front porch where a neighbor might actually sit down and talk to you for a while. The retirement industry spent years telling you that you needed a cool $1 million, a golf cart, and a gate at the front of the neighborhood just to be happy. These 12 towns quietly call that whole bluff. A Social Security check is not a life sentence. In the right place, it is a paid-off house, a slower morning, lower blood pressure, and enough left over at the end of the month to actually enjoy the years you worked so hard to reach. The whole trick was never about earning more. It was about refusing to overpay for the same sky, the same mountains, the same salt air these towns will hand you for half the price. Think about what that actually buys you. Not just a cheaper house, a longer runway, money left over instead of quiet dread, a yard for the grandkids, a porch worth sitting on, doctors close enough to trust, and neighbors close enough to call. The big cities sold everyone a story that comfort has to be expensive and safety has to be gated, and every town on this list quietly proves that story was a lie. So if this video helped you rethink where to spend your retirement in the Carolinas, subscribe and hit that bell so you don't miss the next one. Drop a comment telling me which one of these 12 you'd move to. I read every single one. And if this video hits 15,000 likes, I'll do a part 2 with 12 more towns most people have never even heard of. I'll see you in the next.